You're just a poor nobody copying a dead woman's dreams. No court will even look at you. That's what they told her just hours before the hearing. But Lorraine didn't flinch. She walked into that courtroom with nothing but a tin box, a broken clock, and a daughter who believed in her. What happened next turned a corporate empire on its head over a forgotten recipe and a stolen machine. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Rain struck the windshield in broken rhythms, streaking the fog that clung inside. Lorraine dragged her sleeve across the glass, her hand unsteady from the chill. The defroster had failed for weeks. Beyond the Walmart lot, night sagged with damp air mist coiling on the asphalt vapor, drifting from manholes like weary ghosts. Elsie huddled in the back seat beneath two coats in a faded pink blanket, her cheeks hot with fever. A faint cough rattled before she settled again. Lorraine's eyes flicked to the mirror chest tight, then her hand slipped back to pull the blanket higher. A phone cord swung from the dashboard, plugged into a portable charger she'd jury-rigged at a gas station restroom 2 hours earlier. 38% left. Enough to search for free clinics one more time. Her cold, stiffened fingers tapped the screen. It stalled, the signal crawled. A buzz lit up, need a break. Check real estate deals under $1,000 near you. She nearly brushed it aside. Then with a pause that felt reckless tapped. It led to a cluttered forum thread, most of it spam, but buried between posts was a listing, property sale, $500. Must be paid in full. Historic house on Latchmere Lane, Asheville. No inspections, no questions. Lorraine frowned. No photos. Just a half sentence. Last known owner disappeared. Kitchen still intact. Kitchen. She shifted forward in the seat, blinking against the glare of the blinking lot light overhead. It was either a joke or someone else's last desperate act. She recognized that tone. Her stomach let out a dry knot of hunger. She reached for the glove box and pulled out a crumpled pack of chewable children's Tylenol. Only 2 tablets left. Elsie's fever needed something stronger, but the coupon app kept glitching. She'd already been denied emergency services earlier. The operator said a school lunch worker didn't qualify for urgent shelter relocation. Her thumb hovered over the listing. Was it stupid? Maybe. But stupid people didn't ration heat in their car for a 7-year-old. Stupid people didn't ask 3 churches for soup and still smile through the window glass so their daughter wouldn't cry. She tapped reply. The seller asked nothing, only gave an address and a time. Cash only. First come, first serve. She stacked 480 in small bills, fished the last 20 from her coat lining, bound them with a cafeteria rubber band. No ceremony, no movie score, no guiding light, only the scrape of her shoe on asphalt as she stepped out, money shoved deep into her pocket. The drive was quiet. Mist clung to the treetops as they left the main road. Latchmere Lane looked like it hadn't been paved in a decade. Ferns and weeds scratched the undercarriage of her Honda. The mailbox stood crooked at the end of the drive, metal rusted to green. She pulled in and cut the engine. Elsie shifted as the car door thudded shut. The porch steps creaked under her weight. A single key had been left in the mailbox, wrapped in wax paper sealed with old Scotch tape. The lock stuck, then gave way. She pushed the door open. A low breath of dust met her face, dry wood, and something faintly metallic. Moonlight caught the edge of an overturned chair in the hallway. On the far wall, something hung askew. A clock, a plate. She stepped inside. Her fingers brushed the light switch. Nothing. Behind her, the rain started again, thin and steady. The door eased shut, the sound of wood settling against wood. The floor creaked under her boots as she edged farther in each step, pushing the stale air into motion. Her breath hovered in the chill, brief clouds that vanished as quickly as they formed. The living room opened ahead bare, except for a rocking chair turned toward the wall left mid-thought. No broken glass, no graffiti, no scavenger's mess. Only stillness waiting. She moved into the kitchen. A dim wash of gray leaked through the warped window, outlining the farmhouse counter with its peeling paint. The sink gleamed faintly, as if it had been used not long ago. The stove, gas-fed and stubbornly old, showed no soot. On the rack, a bowl and spoon rested side by side, spotless, untouched by dust. She opened the pantry. Cans of condensed milk, jars of dried cranberries, baking soda, all still sealed. Lorraine turned slowly, her eyes scanning the walls. The countertops, the subtle order of everything. Something smelled faintly sweet. She opened a drawer, then another. Cutlery neatly arranged. Measuring cups stacked by size. Tucked behind a colander was a leather-bound notebook. She pulled it free. The cover bore no name, only two letters and a number pressed into the hide in faint gold ink, MQ5. Inside the handwriting was steady and narrow. Recipes, dozens of them. Muffins, sugar cookies, quick breads. Each marked by footnotes, low-heat alternative swap, if no mixer, budget-friendly sub. The kind of adjustments only someone with experience and limited means would think to write down. Lorraine thumbed through the pages with growing reverence. Whoever wrote this hadn't cared about flashy ingredients. They'd cared about making things work. It was survival in ink. She heard gravel shift outside. Her shoulders stiffened. She crossed quickly to the front window just as a dark SUV pulled into the driveway. Black, unmarked, clean enough to reflect the trees. Two figures stepped out, one man, one woman, dressed in charcoal gray coats, two tailored for local realtors. The woman held a leather portfolio. The man carried nothing but walked with the sort of confidence that made Lorraine's stomach twist. They didn't knock. Just opened the screen door and let it bang behind them. Lorraine opened the front door before they could reach for it. She kept the notebook at her side, half tucked beneath her sweater. "Can I help you?" she asked. The woman smiled tightly. "You must be Ms. Keats." Lorraine nodded slowly. "We represent Coil Foods. This property is currently under legal review. There's a pending investigation regarding misappropriation of intellectual property." Lorraine blinked. "I bought it. Yesterday. Cash. It was listed public. Yes, the man cut invoice even, but the property's contents may still be subject to legal protection. We're here about one item in particular." His eyes flicked toward the kitchen, sharp and sure as if he'd memorized the layout. The woman stepped forward. A small black notebook, leather-bound, embossed. Lorraine hesitated. The notebook grew heavier in her sleeve. "I haven't unpacked anything yet," she said. The woman didn't reply. Her smile didn't move either. The man exhaled softly through his nose. "There are certain things," he said, "better left undisturbed. We'd hate to see anyone get entangled." The woman handed over a card. No title, no logo. Just two names and a number. "We'll return with formal inspection rights soon. Please don't remove anything from the premises." They turned and left. Lorraine closed the door before the SUV disappeared. Her hand trembled around the card. Coil Foods. She knew the name. They supplied half the county's school cafeterias. Giant, faceless, clean labeled. What did they want with an old house and a budget cookbook? She opened the notebook again, this time more carefully. Near the back was a torn page taped in. A different pen. A different hand. A single sentence scrawled across it. "The ones who hide the truth always fear the smell of something baking." Mom Elsie's voice came from upstairs, slightly hoarse but alert. "There's a machine up here. It smells like cupcakes." Lorraine looked up toward the ceiling. Something ticked overhead, faint and steady, like a heart refusing to stop. Her fingers still tingled from that sound when she pushed open the warped door of Bluebird Books, the bell above her clattering like a nervous cough. The smell of aging paper drifted out, dry, warm, touched with vanilla. She slipped inside quickly, shoulders still tight, as though the SUV might have followed her into town. The notebook had been sitting under her pillow, wrapped in a dish towel. She hadn't slept well. Each creak of the old house had made her flinch. She kept seeing the woman smile, the man's blank stare. The phrase entangled echoed in her ears longer than it should have. She moved past the poetry shelves and into the narrow cooking section. Dozens of forgotten spiral-bound booklets lined the lowest racks. Church fundraisers, PTA collections, mid-century homemaker guides. She crouched and ran a finger down their frayed spines. On the floor beside her, she laid a small notepad and began copying from memory 2 tablespoons of applesauce instead of eggs. Longer baking time for dense airfoil tent to prevent burning. She paused between lines, steadying her breathing, trying to keep her handwriting neat. The MQ5 book felt like a ticking clock. If they came back, if they forced her out, she needed to carry the knowledge, not the pages. Looking for something in particular. The voice startled her. Lorraine looked up to find a woman watching her from behind a stack of old pie recipe cards. Elderly, but alert. Hair pinned neatly, cardigan full of mismatched buttons. Not really, Lorraine said, slipping the notebook into her coat pocket. You've got the hands for baking, the woman said. Always moving like they already know the steps. Lorraine offered a polite smile. The woman stepped closer. Name's Fern. Fern Beasley. Don't work here, just come in most Thursdays to see what's new, which is rarely anything. Lorraine nodded slowly. I'm just trying to figure some things out. Well, aren't we all? Fern tilted her head, scanning her. You're not from here. No. Living in town, Lorraine hesitated. Just moved into the house off Buckner's Bend, the little one with the stone mailbox. Fern's expression changed, subtle but immediate. The Quincy house, Lorraine's spine straightened. You know it, Fern didn't answer at first. She stepped past Lorraine, reached for a faded yellow cookbook on the shelf, opened it, and flipped to the inside cover. Belonged to Mabel Quincy, she murmured. She was peculiar, brilliant with flour. Had this idea, said she wanted to open a bakery where nobody had to pay up front. Said everyone deserved something warm once in a while. Lorraine stayed quiet. Then one day she stopped showing up. Didn't pack, didn't leave notes, just vanished. Folks whispered, but nothing came of it. Fern turned to Lorraine, her eyes sharper now. Why'd you move in? It was cheap. I didn't ask questions. Fern chuckled softly without humor. Well, now you're in one. Lorraine shifted. Did you ever see her handwriting? Fern raised an eyebrow. Lorraine pulled the MQ5 book from her coat, opened to a page halfway through, and handed it over. Fern adjusted her glasses. Her fingers hovered above the page. Then they settled. That's Mabel, she whispered. Right down to the underlines. She used to mark anything she tested more than 5 times. Lorraine's chest grew tight. Fern looked up. Where'd you find this in the kitchen? Hidden. You need to be careful, Fern said, gently returning the book. Some people don't like good things being given away. She tucked the notebook close under her arm. Do you think she's still alive? I think someone didn't want her to be. The air thickened between them until Fern pulled a photograph from her canvas bag. Its edges, curled colors, faded. Mabel appeared in mid-laughter beside a machine that looked half-forged, half-handcrafted, a mixer retrofitted with switches and wires, its housing tilted oddly graceful. Lorraine's pulse kicked. That thing's in my attic. Bracing her shoulder against the swollen garage door, she forced it up until it screeched and let a ribbon of light slash across the concrete. Dust swirled in the sudden draft. A metallic tang rose, iron nails, damp cement, the faint ghost of oil. She slipped inside, fingertips grazing the battered tool bench. Elsie hovered at the threshold, then crept in barefoot, clutching a faded rag. There, Elsie whispered, pointing. The machine loomed in the corner like a relic from another century, solid, imposing, yet curiously uncorroded. A crank jutted from its side. 3 mixing arms curved outward like the petals of some mechanical flower. It seemed forged for a smithy rather than a kitchen. Kneeling, she noticed how the littered floor gave way to a strangely tidy patch around the base. Her hand found the crank. She turned it slowly. The gears within stirred with quiet, flawless rhythm. No power cord, she muttered. It's manual. Elsie peered in. So we don't need electricity? Lorraine nodded, biting the inside of her cheek, which means it could work anywhere. Even if everything else shuts down. They worked together, Elsie fetching water in an old cereal bowl, while Lorraine wiped the frame with damp rags. As the layers of grime came off, intricate engravings revealed themselves. Delicate floral etchings circling the base, the initials, MQ, pressed into one of the metal joints. Lorraine reached underneath, brushing against a latch. A shallow compartment clicked open, revealing a folded piece of parchment wedged beneath the machine's housing. She pulled it free and unfolded it on the workbench. The paper was stiff, tinged amber at the edges. A schematic filled the page. Tight, careful lines, handwritten annotations, and in the corner a faded stamp, Quincy Designs. The ink had bled slightly, but the name was still legible. She stood motionless, the paper in her hand. Quincy, the same last name as the woman Fern had mentioned. Mabel. A flicker of something passed through her recognition, or maybe dread. She pulled out her phone and took a photo, then opened a browser window and began typing with trembling thumbs. Quincy Designs hand mixer, manual baking equipment, patent, North Carolina. Coil Foods Patent Acquisitions 1990s. Search results crawled across the screen. Most were dead links or PDF scans of legal bulletins. But then one entry caught her eye, a clipped trade article archived from a 1996 issue of American Baker Monthly. She clicked. Coil Foods acquires exclusive rights to Baker Tech. Hand-mixed design. Prototype. Originally attributed to local inventor Lorraine, read the headline 3 times. The rest of the piece was vague, almost evasive. No mention of Mabel. Just a quote from Coil's spokesperson calling the invention an abandoned prototype that inspired their improved model. It reeked of legal sanitizing. Her stomach twisted. They'd taken it, hidden the origin, steamrolled the name off the surface of something that wasn't theirs, and now they were circling again, returning to clean up whatever pieces remained. Her hands dropped to her lap. The silence in the garage thickened. She knew what happened when you stood too close to a company's fence line. She'd learned it the hard way. 3 years ago, she'd spent months knitting scarves under the label Mountain Threads, selling on Etsy to scrape together rent. One email from a law firm in New Jersey shut her down. The name was already trademarked by a clothing startup with investors. She had no money for a fight. The cease and desist arrived like winter, quiet, cold, and absolute. Elsie slid up beside her and rested her chin on the workbench. "Is it her machine?" she asked softly. The woman in the picture, Lorraine, folded the schematic carefully and slipped it back into the hidden compartment. "I think so." Elsie turned the crank once, slowly watching the arms turn. "Mama," she asked, "if someone takes something from you, can you take it back?" Lorraine hesitated, throat tightening. She wanted to give a quick, sturdy answer, something a 7-year-old could carry like armor. But the truth weighed heavier. In her world, the boundary between what belonged to you and what they could strip away was thin paper, expensive lawyers. Or, Elsie paused, do they just win if they're richer? The crank ticked once, steady and unbothered, while a shadow slid across the workshop floor. Canvas rippled overhead as Lorraine fastened the last tie of her striped tent. The park already pulsed with chatter, folding tables clanking into place. Fried dough scent drifting on the breeze. She straightened the sign scrawled in marker, small batch bakes. Sliding scale pricing, while Elsie sat cross-legged on a blanket, carefully sticking toothpick flags into tiny cupcakes. The mousse had been a challenge. No dairy, no gelatin. But the MQ5 notebook had mapped out how to whip silken tofu with cocoa powder and a trace of vinegar for lift. The mixture set soft yet firm surface glossy. Lorraine had tested it 3 times before settling on the cinnamon dusting. Now trays of neat portions lined her collapsible table beside jars of lavender tea. The first woman to stop a school teacher, judging by the corduroy skirt and canvas tote, took a bite, blinked, leaned closer. "Is this mousse?" "It tastes like mousse, but lighter, almost airy." Lorraine managed a small, uneasy smile. "Plant-based. No dairy, no eggs." The woman gave a slow nod, then motioned for her friend. Within minutes, more people trickled toward the stand. Some asked about ingredients, others handed over crumpled bills without speaking, drawn back by the taste. Lorraine didn't need to persuade anyone. The food carried its own argument. By 11, she had only 2 trays left. "Excuse me," a voice said, deep and steady. A man in his mid-30s stood in front of her table, notepad tucked under one arm, camera dangling from his neck. He wore a denim jacket and rectangular glasses slightly fogged at the corners. "I'm Micah," he said, flipping open the pad. "Freelancer for the Asheville Sunday. You're the talk of this morning. I was hoping to do a quick feature, maybe highlight your approach. This whole reinvention of old recipes thing, it's rare. Kind of beautiful." Lorraine blinked, then laughed softly. "It's just something I found. I mean, reworked. A little." "Well, you're onto something," Micah said, raising his camera. "Mind if I grab a quick shot?" She hesitated, then gave a quick nod, smoothing her apron. He lifted the camera, captured the shot, then jotted her name with a note about the mousse technique. The exchange ended in less than 5 minutes. By noon, nothing remained. She stacked the empty containers with trembling fingers, a sharp current coiling in her stomach. Not joy, something keener, as though she had crossed a line without seeing the drop beneath. The weight pressed harder the following day. An envelope waited, wedged between the screen door and its framed plane, white no-return address. Inside lay a single sheet on embossed letterhead. Your current sales activity represents a direct infringement on a protected culinary process under U.S. Patent 6211347 owned by Coil Foods LLC. Cease and desist from selling or distributing any products derived from said process immediately or face civil litigation. Lorraine dropped the paper. Her knees buckled slightly. It felt like someone had emptied a cold pitcher down her spine. By the end of the week, she was sitting in a low-lit office that smelled of disinfectant and ink. The local attorney appointed to mediate had slick-back hair and fingers that drummed constantly on a clipboard. "This is not a criminal proceeding," he explained in a bored tone. "But you are strongly advised to comply. They're offering a one-time waiver if you sign now. No damages, no pursuit. And if I don't," he slid a second sheet forward legal jargon that might as well have been in Latin. The only phrase she could make out clearly was statutory fines per unit sold. Lorraine didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply signed. Back at the house, she dumped the crumpled receipt book into the trash. The scone notes followed, then the experimental peanut brittle scribbles. When she reached for the small brown journal she'd copied the MQ5 recipes into her hands, stopped shaking long enough to tear 3 pages at once. Elsie watched from the doorway, silent, hugging a worn stuffed rabbit. Lorraine didn't look up. Her fingers worked methodically, page by page. Rip, fold, toss, rip again, until only scraps remained on the counter dusted with flour residue and ink smudges. The kitchen grew quiet. She leaned against the fridge trying to breathe past the tightness in her chest. Something shifted with a soft crinkle paper caught in the seal of the appliance. She pried it loose. A yellowed envelope had slipped between the wall and the fridge's back panel. The handwriting on the front was unsteady, like it had been written in pain. Her thumb brushed the faded pencil lines. Inside, a folded note. "If I disappear, don't let what I made get buried in the dark. MQ." Her fingers closed around the page, the edges brittle, and she slid it into the padded envelope already waiting on the counter. The envelope pressed against her ribs as she pushed through the glass doors of Asheville's Municipal Archive. Lemon polish lingered in the air, cut with the dry scent of paper. Her grip tightened on the bundle inside Mabel's photograph, the mixer sketch, and the rescued note. At the front desk, a woman with white hair pinned in a bun and reading glasses on a chain glanced up. "Land use historical patents, or zoning historical patents," Lorraine replied in a low tone. "I think someone's idea may have been stolen." The woman arched a brow but remained silent, motioning for her to follow. They walked down a carpeted hallway where the air grew cooler and the lights hummed with an unsteady flicker. At a workstation, the clerk slid a binder across the counter. "Index by name. If you find something, fill out a request slip. Retrieval takes about 20 minutes. Lorraine lowered herself onto the squeaky stool and turned to the Q section, her pace slowing as her finger traced the entries. Quincy Mabel, patent attempt, 897Q34, manual rotational mixer, non-electric. Status denied. Reason insufficient technical qualification. Filed Feb 11, denied Feb 15. Her pulse jumped. She copied the code onto the slip and passed it back. While waiting, she unfolded the diagram, eyes following the sharp angles of the pulleys. The script, awkward yet deliberate, carried the precision of an engineer, rather than the casual scrawl of a hobbyist. The clerk returned with a manila folder marked with a red stamp, inactive, not granted. Lorraine opened it gently. There it was, the mixer, every curve, every joint. Though less refined than the one hidden in her garage, the design was unmistakable. She compared it to the photo she'd taken of the actual machine. Nearly identical. A sticky note inside the folder bore a name she didn't recognize. A.R. Haskett, written in a different pen, different hand. She wasn't sure what it meant. She approached the desk again. The woman took one glance at the file and lowered her voice. That one, it was denied the day before Coil Foods filed theirs. Wait, same machine, 80% match, from what I recall, the woman murmured. They used different terminology, called it a zero-energy culinary rotary assembly. But it's the same bones. Lorraine's stomach tightened. So they just took it. The woman glanced over her shoulder before responding. You didn't hear this from me. But sometimes when someone doesn't have the money to push a full patent through, companies lie in wait. watch filings, then swoop in. They've got teams that know exactly how to reword and rush approval. Her throat ached with the urge to scream, but the sound never came. Instead, she forced out a whisper. If someone uncovered this machine, what would they need to prove it belonged to her? The clerk paused. Something dated. Witnesses, a journal, maybe blueprints, anything older than the official patent. But without legal help, her words trailed off the silence, finishing the rest. Lorraine shut the folder with care and slid it back across the counter. Fragments jostled in her mind. Mabel's smile in the faded photo, the crank arm's steady curve, the hidden letter, the lawyer's threat. They collided until her chest tightened. Outside, the air pressed heavy, a gray film coating Asheville streets as rain threatened to fall. She had left Elsie with Fern, grateful her daughter didn't have to absorb the weight of this visit. The sidewalk wavered under her gaze. No allies, no money, only the fragile power of a truth buried too long and the decision of whether to wield it. A voice cut through the fog, Fern's name flashing on her phone screen. Lorraine answered, heartbeat still skipping. Lorraine, Fern's voice cracked with urgency. I think I've found something. There's a trap door in my pantry I never used. I remembered Mabel once asked me to store a box for her. Wooden, locked. I never opened it. Lorraine gripped the phone tighter, her thumb trembling near the speaker. Fern continued, I think you need to come see it. Now? By the time she reached Fern's kitchen, the air smelled of mint tea gone stale and cedar dust from an old spice drawer. On the table between them sat the wooden box. It was darker than she'd expected, oak, maybe walnut with worn brass hinges, and a lock that shimmered faintly beneath a layer of grime. Fern had wrapped it in a faded dish towel before setting it down. Neither of them had touched it since. Check, this Fern muttered, pulling a threadbare coat from the hall closet. Her fingers trembled as she flipped the lining of the inner pocket. Nestled inside, stitched so carefully it looked invisible from the outside, was a tiny brass key. Lorraine didn't speak. Fern placed it in her hand and Lorraine turned it over once before guiding it into the lock. It resisted for half a second, then clicked. Inside, carefully bundled in a waxed cloth, was a stack of old letters tied with dental floss. Beneath that, a folded schematic paper, yellowed with age but unmistakably the same machine now sitting in her garage. She laid the papers out across the table. The handwriting was Mabel's, tight, precise, annotated with timestamps and initialed lines, every revision marked in blue or red pen. Then came the envelope stamped copy. Lorraine pulled out a single-page contract. Some of the print was faded, but one phrase was underlined 3 times. Transfer of patent rights in perpetuity. The signature line was smudged. Next to it sat a second version nearly identical, except the underlined section was missing. It had a different date, different witness signature, same header, same letterhead from Coil Foods' legal division. Lorraine scanned the margins. Someone had circled a line in pencil and written a single word beside it, forged. A letter slipped loose from the bottom of the stack. She unfolded it gently. Dear Mabel, we appreciate your interest in developing home-use culinary tools. At this time, however, we must formally reject your proposed partnership. It was dated February 12, 2003, 3 days before Coil filed their own patent. Lorraine couldn't stop blinking. Her brain wanted to say something but hadn't found the words yet. She looked to Fern, who was watching her with a stillness that didn't waver. I think they offered her a fake deal, Lorraine whispered. Something she thought was a collaboration, but they slipped in new terms. Changed the language, then filed it themselves. Fern nodded slowly. That's what she feared. But by the time she figured it out, they'd buried her in red tape. Even froze her assets. She couldn't keep the house. She came to me one night, left that box and said, if anything happens, keep it sealed. They'll come sniffing if they think I still have something. Lorraine's chest tightened. The chair beneath her felt too narrow. Her palms had begun to sweat and her spine ached from how rigid she'd gone. She tried to fight, Lorraine said aloud. Voice distant. She had documentation. She had a lawyer. And she still lost everything. And I'm standing in her kitchen holding the wreckage just like she must have right before it all collapsed. Lorraine picked up the altered contract, the one with the missing line. Her thumb brushed the date. Fern's voice broke the silence. They never went after me because they assumed I didn't know. But you've already poked the beast. They'll come harder now. A slow breath left Lorraine's lungs, but it didn't bring relief. She turned toward the window. Outside, the sky hung low gray and heavy as poured cement. Cars moved through the neighborhood like ghosts. If she stepped back now, there'd be no shame, just safety. But Elsie's voice rose in her memory. If someone steals from you and they're rich, do they always win? Lorraine reached for her coat but didn't put it on. Her hand hesitated at the collar. Fern's words followed low but steady. You can walk away, but if you stay, this time maybe they're the ones who'll be afraid. She closed her fingers tighter around the folder before leaving the house. Her boots scuffed against the waxed linoleum floor of the Buncombe County Courthouse hallway. The file in her hand, thin, trembling slightly with each step, might as well have been 1,000 pages heavy. Inside everything she'd spent the past week compiling Mabel's schematics, the altered contracts, the dated rejection letters, Fern's sworn statement. No lawyer accompanied her, just the folder and a hope that felt like it might snap. The intake clerk barely looked up when Lorraine handed over the paperwork. Her fingers hovered an extra second, reluctant to let go of what had taken everything to piece together. Property and patent-related dispute, she murmured. Assigned to civil clerk intake queue. They'll call you if anything's missing, the woman replied, stamping the top sheet. Could take up to 3 weeks. Lorraine gave a brief nod, her throat scraped raw by unspoken words. She turned to leave, but a voice cut across her step. Didn't expect to see you here. Micah stood by the vending machine, clutching a cup gone cold. His jacket drooped, shirt wrinkled, eyes shadowed with fatigue. I could say the same, Lorraine answered. Reporters usually chase celebrities, not courthouse dust. His mouth twitched as he motioned toward the bench. Sometimes justice has to beg for its headline. She sank down beside him, the folder sagging in her lap, weighty as stone. Micah swallowed a mouthful of bitter coffee, eyes narrowing. What's inside her grip tightened on the file. Evidence. Something stolen years ago, enough to wreck a woman's life. Recognition flickered in his stare. Mabel Quincy. Her chest tightened, breath caught halfway. Micah pushed the cup aside and pulled a binder from his bag. I've been tracking Coil Foods for months. Their Kansas branch is under quiet review, EPA violations, labor abuse, patent fraud. He spread the binder open. A scanned memo glared up from the page. Lorraine's gaze snagged on one line, design model approved, source acquisition unclear. That's code for stolen, Micah muttered, tapping the margin. And I've seen diagrams like yours before. Another page turned an old slide deck titled Target Acquisition, Quincy Design, Replication Pathway. Lorraine's hand gripped the bench until her knuckles whitened. You're not the first to dig, he continued. But you might be the last piece. Her words rasped out. How Micah leaned back, jaw set. There's a class action case frozen at the Attorney General's desk. One thing missing, proof Coil lifted work from someone outside their payroll. His eyes dropped to the folder on her knees. If those signatures match, the hallway seemed to tilt around her. Wait, your archive. A shrug, faint and uneasy. My grandfather co-founded the company. I grew up in their prototype rooms. Asked too many questions and they shut me out. Her gaze sharpened on him, startled. Didn't think you'd be the one holding their coffin nail, he said softly. Her fingertips traced the folder's worn edge, nerves settling into a harder line. Doubt shifted, rearranging itself into the beginnings of resolve. Micah slid another document across the bench. This one was sharper. A memo from someone high up in legal, dated 2004. It read, Unit too easy to replicate. If she returns, eliminate trace. Burn schematic archive immediately. At the bottom, she will not push further. Single mother, no legal team. The words seared her. She stood almost too fast, the file pressed tight against her chest. Micah looked up, brows slightly raised. I need copies of everything you have, Lorraine said. He nodded. You'll have them by tonight. By morning, she was already smoothing out an apron, palms damp with nerves. The canvas tent flapped gently above her as she looked out at the line forming along the vendor rows. Asheville's annual Food Revival Festival hummed with chatter and autumn light, thick with the smells of roasted corn-grilled sausages and cinnamon. Their booth sat modestly at the far end, nestled between a kettle corn stall and a hand-pressed cider truck. The painted sign above them read in neat looping cursive, Original Recipes of Mabel Quincy, Revived. Below that smaller print, homemade, hand-cranked, history reclaimed. Fern stood to one side, her silver hair tucked beneath a maroon beret. She was carefully arranging a row of black and white photographs of Mabel beside the vintage machine restored to its full glory, polished and humming gently from the force of Lorraine's cranking arm. Micah adjusted the tripod, checking angles. Live streams rolling. Sounds good. Don't flinch. I'm not the one who flinches, Lorraine muttered, steadying the mixing bowl. At precisely 11, she picked up a yellowing sheet of paper from the table and stepped forward. Her voice when it came was low but clear. This was written in 2005, she said. A letter Mabel Quincy addressed to the Asheville Community Kitchen. It was never delivered. She unfolded it slowly, letting the camera catch every movement. If they bury me in silence, may someone's hands dig up what I built. Let it feed the mouths I couldn't reach. Let them taste the dignity they tried to erase. The crowd, small, at first grew still. Fern handed out tiny paper plates with mousse cake, light, creamy, subtly sweet, with a hint of nutmeg and rosemary. Try this, Lorraine called, her smile soft but defiant. Made with the same machine they said wasn't worth patenting. People chewed slowly. A few eyebrows rose. Someone in the back said, "This is different, but it's good. Children lick spoons." An elderly man asked for seconds. A young woman pulled out her phone to record. More people began drifting over, reading the sign, whispering to each other. Micah moved like a ghost around them, capturing footage angles, reactions. He zoomed in on the machine's engraved plate, Quincy Designs Asheville 2001, and caught a close-up of Lorraine's hands turning the crank flour dust rising in the late morning light. At 11:47, two figures in tailored suits slipped into the crowd. One carried a leather briefcase. The other scanned the booth like a bloodhound scenting smoke. Lorraine caught their eyes. She didn't stop. The man in the briefcase stepped closer, then veered left, pretending to browse. The woman hovered near the sign. Fern leaned in and murmured, "They're from Coil." Micah didn't blink. "Keep going." Lorraine turned back to the crowd. "This machine doesn't use electricity. Mabel built it to survive storms, power outages, even poverty. And she wasn't trying to sell to corporations. She wanted a co-op bakery, one where folks paid what they could." More phones rose. A young reporter in a Channel 6 windbreaker elbowed her cameraman. "Get a mic on her." The Coil rep stepped closer. "Miss Keats, I'm going to ask." Micah blocked his view with a tripod adjustment. "You're on live broadcast," he whispered. "Smile." The man stiffened. The woman checked her phone, brows furrowing. Lorraine's inbox pinged. She ignored it. 5 minutes later, the suits were gone. Micah glanced down at his phone. Email from their legal. "Cease and desist. They're trying to make it look civil." And he held up his screen, sent it to the public live stream comments. Lorraine returned to the machine, resumed cranking. Her forearms burned, but she kept the rhythm steady. The mousse mixture thickened perfectly, just like in Mabel's notes. Fern ladled portions with quiet pride. A clap cracked from the far side of the crowd. Others joined, hesitant at first, then swelling until the sound rolled like surf across the field. Micah bent near his words, a murmur. "They're sweating now." Lorraine brushed flour from her wrist. "No, they're afraid." The hearing room pressed in with its washed-out walls, the shade of porridge left too long on the stove. Lorraine sat flanked by Micah and a sharp-eyed assistant district attorney, juggling a briefcase that bulged with papers. Opposite them, 3 dark-suited attorneys claimed the other table. A clerk slouched at their side, and a woman with a clip badge studied the room with flat detachment. Her lungs struggled for rhythm. Behind her, Elsie swung her legs in silence, straw bent in an empty juice box. Fern waited nearby, hands resting on a folder, swollen with Mabel's past. The judge's silver hair pulled back, lowered her glasses, and spoke with a gravelly edge. "We convene today on Coil Foods' request for a preliminary injunction against Lorraine Keats, alleging misappropriation of trade secrets tied to the MQ5 process and device." One of the corporate lawyers' rose jacket tugged into place. "Your Honor, our clients possess verified documentation proving Ms. Keats duplicated proprietary methods secured under Patent 80826C. We ask the court to halt her distribution and demonstrations immediately." He opened a slim folder with practiced calm, sliding glossy printouts across the judge's bench. "These are time-stamped internal filings, Your Honor, all verified." Micah leaned forward slightly, lips pressed into a straight line. The district attorney whispered something brief to him, then rose. Your Honor, the ADA said we request the court accept a late supplement to the defense's submission. The judge raised an eyebrow. On what grounds, he gestured to a document. We've confirmed the authenticity of several internal communications from Coil Foods Executive Archives, emails dated before the patent filing, explicitly instructing their research team to replicate and file ahead of original claimant. The original claimant, as you'll see, is Mabel Quincy. We have corroborating schematics of patent filing dated a day before Coil's and 3 signed letters addressed to the U.S. Patent Office that were never logged due to sudden legal interference. Lorraine stared at the floor, the pattern of the laminate blurring into something watery. The ADA passed the judge a small bound packet. She thumbed through it, lips thinning. Micah nudged her elbow gently. Steady. Fern stood when called. Her hands shook slightly as she handed over Mabel's letters the original diagram with faded pencil marks and a photograph of Mabel standing beside the prototype mixer, smudged with time but undeniable. She gave me the box in 2006, Fern said clearly. Told me not to open it unless something smelled wrong. The room went very still. Coil's lead counsel shifted in his chair. Your Honor, the authenticity of these documents. The email the judge interrupted, tapping a page, is from your CEO's account, sent at 2:13 a.m. on June 19, 2006, saying, quote, destroy all prototype paperwork before she resurfaces. That you want to dispute its meaning is your prerogative, but don't question its source. It was pulled directly from your servers legally by order of the State Attorney General. The woman with the badge beside the lawyer stiffened. One of the assistants began packing up quietly, sensing which way the wind was turning. The judge removed her glasses. This court issues a preliminary injunction against Coil Foods. All current and future use of the MQ5 process or device is hereby suspended pending full investigation. Ms. Keats, you are free to resume operations with the support of the state's investigation team. The gavel hit wood. Lorraine didn't hear it. Not really. Her ears buzzed a low roar like wind through long grass. She turned toward the gallery. Elsie had jumped to her feet, beaming arms thrown up without making a sound. Micah grinned as he stuffed papers into his bag. They don't even realize, he muttered half to himself, that today was just the first punch. Lorraine didn't answer. She only found Elsie's fingers curled sticky and warm around her own and held on. The same grip carried her through the next doorway, hours later, when the shop's bell chimed its usual off-key jingle. Lorraine pushed it open with her hip, balancing a tray of eggs in one arm and nudging Elsie's backpack aside with her foot. The smell of cardamom and warm vanilla rose to meet them, edged with something sharper like ambition that had finally cooled into purpose. The sign was still taped crookedly on the inside window, handwritten in black marker on brown craft paper for those who stayed. The counter gleamed, worn smooth by endless service. Behind it, the original mixer rose like a monument rebuilt by a retired machinist from Fletcher who had waived off payment once he spotted Mabel's name etched in the gears. 2 more units had arrived the week before each, with slight variations in finish, all driven by the same hand-crank design. The schematic stayed locked in a drawer near the register, though one copy hung framed on the wall, not as a threat, but a vow. At the corner table, Elsie hunched over, her workbook tongue pressed into her cheek as she scrawled thick numbers. Every so often, she lifted her head, eyes darting to the line of customers stretching down the sidewalk in the crisp morning air. Lorraine dipped the steel scoop into its tin of steaming water, spun it once in her palm, then pressed it into the mousse. The motion had become muscle memory, pull, press, release. A dome of chocolate settled neatly into a paper cup with a soft thud. Fern slipped in through the back door, apron tied wrong, again balancing a tray of tarts like an offering. Kid in the blue coat says this is his 4th, she muttered. We running a mousse cult, now let him. Lorraine murmured, the corner of her mouth twitching. I'm serious, Fern said, shifting the tray onto the shelf. Oat milk's almost gone. If you don't call Jerry, we'll be rationing like it's wartime. Lorraine tugged open the drawer, scribbled a note onto the pad. Add extra vanilla. He always forgets. The bell above the door chimed, ushering in a gust of cold and the scrape of boots. Micah ducked inside, cheeks flushed, camera bag slung over one shoulder. News just broke, he said, breath catching. She's out. Lorraine paused mid-scoop. He nodded. Jessica Hale, Coil's legal rep. Resigned this morning. Word is the board's opening a formal investigation. She placed the scoop gently into the tin, wiped her hands on a towel. Her pulse didn't spike. There was no victory dance, no applause. Just a quiet, anchored sense of something heavy lifting, like a plank being pulled from a sealed window. "You want coffee?" she asked, walking toward the back. Micah followed, shaking his head. "Press is circling the Mabel story now. Town council's organizing a dedication next month. They're naming the community garden after her." Lorraine opened the cabinet, pulled down 2 chipped mugs. She'd probably hate that. She'd also hate being erased. Fern appeared beside them, swiping at a stray hair with the back of her wrist. About time this place had a story worth telling. Outside, the line continued. A woman in scrubs held her toddler by one hand and a cinnamon roll in the other. An elderly man leaned against the bench trading jokes with a teenager holding a skateboard and a lemon tart. The glass fogged near the edges with breath and steam. Lorraine poured the coffee, listening to it trickle sharp and steady, her fingers wrapped around the cup, soaking in the warmth. "I'm not speaking at the thing," she said quietly. "No one's asking you to," Micah replied. "I just want to be here, making what she never got to finish." Micah raised his cup. "Then you're already doing it." In the front, Elsie called out without looking up, "Mom, he wants the peanut butter one." Lorraine stepped back behind the counter, reached for the scoop again. Her hands moved with certainty. Now no tremble, no pause. The mousse landed cleanly in its cup. She passed it to a boy with frost-tipped ears and a wide grin who took it like it was gold. Behind him, the next customer stepped forward, shifting his boots against the floor while the line thinned outside. By the time the final order left her hands, the light outside had shifted. Wind tugged at the laundry line as Lorraine crossed into the backyard, a wooden sign tucked beneath her arm. The trees had begun their slow surrender to autumn leaves, loosening, tumbling like amber coins across the grass. The chill brushed her skin, but it no longer cut the way it once had. At the garden fence, she pressed the sign against a weathered post, Marchand Bakery, hand-carved edges, smoothed by rain and years. It had belonged to another lifetime, but under her grip it settled as something reclaimed. She drove the nails in with quick strikes, each blow landing like punctuation on a sentence left unfinished too long. Across the yard, Elsie circled on her second-hand bicycle boots, kicking scarf trailing like a cape. "Mom," she shouted, cheeks burning. "Watch this." Lorraine turned as her daughter leaned into the curve of the garden path, teetered, then righted herself with a victorious cry. A smile tugged at Lorraine, not amusement, but a release that felt closer to reverence. She drew breath to cheer, only to pause when the back gate groaned open. Fern entered unhurried, a tin box balanced under one arm and a paper bag in the other. "Brought cinnamon rolls," she said, "and something else." Meeting her at the porch, Lorraine brushed her palms against her jeans. "You keep uncovering relics in that house of yours." "They uncover themselves," Fern replied with a dry chuckle. This one was tucked behind the flour bin, wrapped in cloth. The tin passed into her hands. Lorraine eased the lid open on the porch rail. Inside lay a round kitchen clock, its copper rim dulled, but its face unmarred. The hands moved steadily alive. Her fingertips lingered on the glass. "It still runs." "Of course," Fern said gently. "Mabel's things don't stop, not even when no one's watching." They stood together listening. Then Lorraine carried the clock into the kitchen, set it on the counter, dragged a stool across the floor, and climbed up. She found a nail above the spice rack and hooked it there. The clock swayed briefly, then steadied. The ticking filled the room, measured certain. She scanned the space. The counters still bore their chips, the floor still groaned by the stove, yet the air held warmth, now earned and tangible. Behind her, Fern unpacked the paper bag. "I brought jam, too. Peach with ginger. Got the recipe from one of Mabel's old cookbooks." Lorraine rinsed 2 mugs, filled them with tea, passed one over. "You ever think we'd end up here?" "I never thought we left," Fern said. "We were just waiting to come home." Outside, Elsie had paused her writing and was now crouched in the yard collecting leaves in a circle. She was singing off-key, tuneless, perfect. Lorraine opened the screen door and stepped out. "What are you making love?" Elsie looked up. A sun, but with fall colors. "You like it? It's beautiful." The wind picked up. The sign overhead creaked softly. Lorraine glanced at it again, at the name Marchand. Mabel's maiden name now reclaimed. It wasn't just a tribute, it was a flag. She sat on the porch step, pulling her coat tighter as Fern joined her. The tea had cooled, but she drank it anyway. Fern nudged her with a smile. You know, if you ever wanted a proper sign painted with one of those fancy logos, I know someone. Lorraine shook her head. This one's just right. Handwritten, like the recipes. Still taking orders for next week. Only for people who promise to sit and eat here. No more takeaway. Fern laughed. That'll scare half the town off. Then the other half can stay. Those are the ones I want. In the distance, a dog barked. The church bell rang 5 times. Somewhere, someone turned on a radio. Lorraine looked out over the fence past the trees that lined her little property toward the distant street where her life used to end every time a car passed without stopping. Now it didn't matter who passed. She wasn't waiting anymore. From inside, the kitchen clock ticked on, steady as breath. Elsie called again. Mom, can we make cookies tomorrow? The ones with the lemon glaze. Lorraine raised her voice over the wind. Only if you help with dishes. I will, she smiled into her mug. Then we've got ourselves a deal. A leaf landed on her knee. She didn't brush it away. The light was thinning, casting long shadows on the steps. Still, the house behind her glowed, warm, quiet, humble, filled with the scent of cinnamon and flour and stories finally told. Sometimes the smallest things carry the weight of justice. A handwritten recipe, a clock that never stopped ticking, a voice that refuses to be silenced. Lorraine didn't just reclaim her own future. She honored a woman erased by power and fear. In a world that often forgets the quiet ones, this was a story about staying, about daring to bake hope into something real. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. We've got more tales coming of resilience, revenge, and redemption.